Pepler. I'm a senior investment advisor and portfolio manager with BMO Wealth, and I will be your host and moderator for today's event. At BMO, we have a rich history of supporting women in business and leadership. We have created many programs and initiatives for the advancement of women and are committed to removing barriers to women's empowerment and promoting an inclusive market. We are proud to be a national strategic partner of Women Get On Board and are honored to embark on our 4th year of working with this great organization. Women Get On Board is a member-based company with a large and diverse constituency across Canada that promotes, empowers, and connects women to corporate boards. WGOB makes significant tools and resources available to its membership and corporations seeking qualified board members. In this virtual session, you will learn how to engage your network to identify and secure board opportunities. Our 2 accomplished panelists will provide practical and actionable insights for using your network to identify opportunities and obtain board interviews with organizations looking for your skills and expertise. The discussion will focus on 3 pieces: using your network to identify board opportunities, how to build and engage your network to this end, and the importance of developing a standout board resume and LinkedIn profile. Before we begin, I just want to note that panelist Judith Athletic is unable to join us due to a family matter. Our 2 panelists today are Deborah Rosati and Robin Tingley. Deborah Rosati is the founder and CEO of Women Get On Board, an 800 member-based social purpose company that connects, promotes, and empowers women to corporate boards. She is a corporate director, accomplished entrepreneur, author, and a fellow chartered professional accountant. Deborah has over 35 years of high growth and transformational leadership expertise in the technology, consumer, retail, cannabis, and life sciences sectors, with a particular focus on private equity and venture capital. She currently serves on the board of Tall Distributed Information Technologies. Previously, Deborah served as lead director and chair of the audit committee of Chiron Life Sciences and as vice chair and chair of the audit committee for Lift & Co. Deborah is a champion of business, corporate governance, and board diversity. She is a change agent who shares her insights and experience through panel discussions, podcasts, articles, and ebooks. Over the years, Deborah has earned numerous awards. Recently, she was named one of WXN's top 100 most powerful women entrepreneurs and one of WXN's top 100 most powerful women corporate directors. She has been recognized as a 2020 Director to Watch and a 2014 Diversity 50 candidate. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you, Allison.
Robin Tingley is an entrepreneur, speaker, author, and award-winning communication strategist. She is the chair of the Board of Governors of the University of New Brunswick, honorary lieutenant colonel in the Canadian Armed Forces 37th Service Battalion, and a founding member of Women for 50%, an initiative focused on greater female representation in politics. Robin has lived and worked around the world as a corporate HR and communication executive for a Fortune 100 company. In 2015, she launched her own management consulting firm, Glass Sky Inc., which provides strategic communications, creative design, research, and diversity and inclusion programs to businesses and governments. Her best-selling book, 10 Essentials for the Motivated Millennial, and her career advice are featured in Dow Jones, Oxford Business News, Fast Company, CBS, Monster.com, and The Future of Everything. Robin holds a degree in psychology from St. Francis Xavier University and a degree in journalism from the University of King's College. She has studied executive education at McGill, the Paul Merage School of Business at University of California, Irvine, and Oxford University's Saïd Business School. She has also completed a postgraduate certification from King's College London Schools of International Relations and National Security Studies. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Let's get started. Robin, we are often asked how someone lands their first board position. Can you tell us the evolution of your career that led you to want to join a board, how you identified the opportunities available, and then ultimately networked your way onto a board?
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and really excited to be here to talk to you about what I think is a very important topic and a place where women ought to be seen and contributing more and more. I really started my board journey like a lot of people, which was probably through the desire of wanting to give back to my community. When I think back to Robin in her early 20s, I was working in a space. I came up through telecommunications, very much. I have corporate experience. And that was in a space of communications and public affairs. And part of my responsibility was around donations, charitable donations, and really creating that network with our nonprofit organizations in the communities where our employees lived and where we served our customers. So as a result of that work, I ended up building quite an extensive network, and we'll come back to network, I think, an awful lot today. A network in the nonprofit world. And so that naturally led itself to invitations to serve on boards. And I can't say that I was very focused, and that's one of the reflections and the lessons learned that I want to share. But what was important is that I kept an open mind, and I ended up over a period of probably 10 years serving on the Provincial Museum Board. I got my first taste of academia, and then that morphed into economic development boards, which, was kind of more of the corporate avenue. And in all of those early board experiences, I was serving as a general member of the board, as a general director, and I would have committee experience. I hadn't yet started to chair committees or move up to chair at the executive level of those boards, but I was building my muscle in governance. And so I think that that is a wonderful entry point when we think about helping our community and learning about how boards operate, is to really be open-minded around that nonprofit sector. The other lesson would be, for me in hindsight, is to get clear. Get really clear when you're thinking about your journey around boards, around what kind of a board, right? What kind of a board would be interesting to you? Where do your natural interests lie, but also where do your talents lie that you could, bring to bear in a board setting? And I think at times when I was younger, I probably said yes to opportunities without having fully thought that through. Now, I benefited, of course, in all situations because I learned and I was exposed to things, and I really did understand more at the end of any assignment or any board term, because nonprofit can be rich and very long, and you can progress. So that's, Allison, a little bit about my journey and how I first started younger in my career into this whole subject of board service.
Thank you, Robin. Deborah, how about the path to your first board? Did you start with nonprofit, or did you jump right into a corporate board position?
Well, I like to say I was very by chance, and it was corporate boards. I was coming out of being a CFO of a technology startup, and I lived in Ottawa at the time, and took the company from ground zero to an exit. So I was really developing my knowledge in building out emerging technology companies, financings, and my first board opportunity was through my network. And they said, hey, I have financial expertise, so we need somebody to chair our audit committee. Can you join this board? I knew the people. I didn't do like this. We're talking well over 2 decades ago, and formal governance certification wasn't around. It was all typically men, and I was going on as a professional. So I joined this board, and within 9 months, it had a very successful exit. And then, before I knew it, I had joined a venture capital fund as a general partner. And as a general partner, we would serve on the portfolio company boards. So interesting enough, my first boards were for-profit boards. They were early stage technology companies, which I had that experience of having been a CFO. So when you talk about, where did it segue from? It came from my knowledge in the industry, my knowledge of early stage technology companies and the growth pains and the risks and the opportunities associated with it. So mine came that way. And it wasn't until I left venture capital that I really realized I really liked the combination of my financial expertise, combining it with governance. And I really began my journey as an independent corporate director. It's been now 2 decades. And I can tell you unconditionally, I've been on six public company boards, 8 private company boards. I've been on 2 university boards. I've been on a multitude of different not-for-profits, but all of them in one way or another have come through my network, through people. They see you doing and having a particular role, and one role begets another role. And I would say in the journey is showing up, being prepared, being engaged, being passionate about it, and really knowing your exit. I would say as women, we really want to get on that first board, and sometimes we don't do enough due diligence on it. And I put my hand up there and say that has not happened. So you kind of learn. 2, it's not for profit and you care about it and you want to give back. And, you might have a, 2 3-year terms, maybe 3 3-year terms, and you just don't want to leave. But at the same time, you want to be building your leadership from a governance perspective. So you might join that on a committee and work your way into potentially a committee chair. And then ultimately, if you really do have ambitions and want to develop and be part of that organization, is you should be going for the chair or vice chair. Like there's no reason why. I always say, set your aspirations, know your exit, know that you want to leave in a leadership role if you are giving back from a not-for-profit, and be really strategic. And you might start off at a really local level, i.e. your kids' hockey association, and you might end up working your way into a national or international not-for-profit. So, Habitat for Humanity, national, and there's international as an example. So I think you want to be really strategic. Just don't fill up your dance card for the sake of filling up and having board. Make sure you're passionate about it. Make sure you do your due diligence, and really it's the company you keep, and who are the other people that are on the board that you're going to be associated with. And so mine really started in the corporate world, and then I segued and had opportunities both in public sector and not-for-profit.
Thank you, Deborah. I'm curious, would either one of you suggest turning down a board position early on in your quest? Robin, you suggested that maybe you had you'd started on a couple of boards that weren't necessarily something you would have necessarily taken on. In the beginning, is it best to just say yes, or should you take Deborah's advice and curate sort of your selection?
I definitely think you have to curate your selection. And I learned that lesson. It's a great follow-up question, because when you look at the story I told, and when you look at the story that Deborah told, we both got approached, and several here might have this, because of the network and because of the work you do, right? Because of the work Deborah was doing, because of the work that I was doing, we're naturally pulled into these spaces. And so it's easy to just say yes, and you do want to help, and they're friendlies and they're people in your network. However, I would want to now get very clear on what are the objectives of the organization? What role will I have in helping to advance those objectives from a governance perspective? What will I be doing? How frequent will we be gathering? All of that. Who else is on the board? And what's the skills matrix look like? And all of the different personalities that will be around the table and what their role is. So I think I would have almost interviewed them a little bit, before just saying yes and jumping in. Again, I think they were all formative, but certainly now in hindsight, it's important to make sure you know what you're signing up for, and that meets your interests, and that leverages your talents. And I love to hear Deborah say, like, if you're going to do nonprofit, go for the chair. Like, be really strategic, have an impact. I mean, I think about just in academia, now having a network that is truly global around governance of institutions. It's tremendous experience, and it is transferable experience. And so I think you have to have a little bit of a plan. Yes.
Okay. In that respect, so we often use executive search firms when we're looking to advance our careers. Deborah, would that be a follow along potentially when you're looking for an opportunity that fits? Would it be appropriate to look at an executive search firm or a recruiter to secure a position? And if so, how would we network our way in with a particular firm?
So I kind of want to frame it up and I don't have the exact number, but I'm talking in the corporate world, and I'm talking probably public company boards. Probably less than 25% of the board mandates, board searches go to executive search firms. So there's 75% that are through your network. And even still, if they go to an executive search firm, you might be a known entity to someone on the board. They put your name forward. The executive search firm is to do a competitive process in this board search. And so, which is good, it's due diligence, it's due process. But at the end of the day, a lot of boards, at the end of the day, it's about fit, and it's about having people, it's about the culture, it's about alignment. And it's, so it is important to go to executive search firms sometimes to go outside your network and get a breadth and depth of different individuals. And it really, it is a true process, and it's very costly. But sometimes individuals within on the board can have a network as well. And so I think as individuals, executive search firms will get inevitably resumes all the time. Can you look at this? Can you look at that? And I think what I try to do if I'm in conversations with any women, I might ask them, who do they know at an executive search firm? And if I have a network and have a contact, I might say, you might want to speak to this person. This person focuses on financial services, if that's what you're looking for. Or I want to get into public sector. This particular person within a particular executive search firm focus on public sector. Or maybe it's not for profit. So I think you don't want to shoot randomly. You really want to be targeted, and you have to, and getting warm introductions to those executive search firms, I think are so important, because they're going to have a mirage of individuals coming in. And so they're somewhat gatekeepers. And I think be really focused on what sector you want to be focused, like going after or pursuing. Because each executive search firm, they have practices, certain practice areas that they have. And again, there's about 75% of board opportunities that don't even hit the executive search firms. They don't even get the mandate. So I think it's good, but be very deliberate when you are approaching them. And I think warm introductions go a really long way.
Okay, so that's the better approach. Robin, for you, what's been your experience? And I'm curious what one does if we have to decline an offer from a recruiter. If we're keen, we've reached out and we now have this opportunity, what should we do if it's not quite the right fit?
Okay, great question. So I'll take it from the perspective of someone who recently received a call from an executive search firm that was looking for my interest around serving on a corporate board. And this was probably, 3 weeks ago. So very recently. And first of all, as Deborah says, when you get those calls, like, they don't happen all the time. So you want to make sure that you are fostering a good rapport, that you are taking the time to create a relationship, and that you make sure that even if this isn't the one, right, that you make sure that you understand who this search firm is, what is it that they are looking for. Chances are, if they have called you, you're already on a short list. They've got you ticked against some kind of skills matrix, and they've decided that you're going to fit a slot on their board. So I always start by expressing interest and asking, why'd you call me, right? And what are you looking for? And so I understand a little bit more from that perspective. I consider this conversation really essential to be able to understand how they search and to understand the frequency with which they are going to search for this board, right? Because if this is not the time, will it be next year? Will it be in 2 years? What would the fit kind of work out to be if I am slightly interested? And I really take the opportunity to explain a little bit more about who I am and my accomplishments and my areas of interest and my areas of expertise, because again, I was on the list for a reason, but I'm not sure exactly why, right? And they might have a definition in their head. So I make sure that I never leave that conversation before I have expressed exactly what it is that I think they need to know about me. Now, to your question, if it's not the right time, and this happened to be one of those situations because of my other duties, it wouldn't be responsible for me to take something else on. And so I made that clear, but I didn't want to close the door completely. And so I went back to, when is your next search cycle? Please keep me on the list. Let's have a conversation then. Please call me back. Of course, I followed up in writing. I got onto LinkedIn, made sure that that network was going to be alive after that phone call. But I did also say, can I give you the names of other women? And I think that's really important, so that we are paying it forward and that we're helping each other to get into this network of executive search firms and on the radar. It's not often, as Deborah says, that they are commissioned to engage in a search. So when they are, make sure that we're advancing names of women, 2-3 names. And of course, they always say, sure, we would love to, because they're building their roster as well. So I think it's about taking the time. Don't never just say no, thank you. It's taking the time, it's promoting yourself, making sure you're clarifying your interests, keeping that door open for a time in future when it might be a fit, or if it's not that particular cycle that's going to come around again for that particular firm, there might be others they're searching for, and supporting each other and referring other women forward.
So that sounds great. So basically, if you get that call, that recruiter then becomes part of your immediate network in that respect on a go forward basis.
Absolutely. Make it work for you.
I'd like to just sort of add on to that. So I will get executive search firms that will call in directly for me, and I will, if I don't have bandwidth, it's not my interest, I say, I always say, can I put 3 other names forward, 3 other women, right? But the other thing is, we do get them coming into Women Get on Board. And so what they'll do, they'll ask who in your network, and these are because I have relationships with them. They'll say, we have a search going on for a Crown Corp. They're looking for a chair, or they're looking for this. They'll send over the spec, and then I'll provide them a confidential list from our directory and say, based on what you're looking for, here are some names you might consider. So I just wanted to, so they'll go through different channels. They'll also post on LinkedIn. I just saw a posting, Boyden just posted for GFL, a very large waste industry company, public. So some of them will actually post on LinkedIn. So they go broader. And I think my view, if I have a conversation with a company, is you get a better roster of candidates if you go broader, if it's just confidential and you're chasing names. So anyway, I wanted to also say, I will get calls and they'll ask specifically in our Women Get on Board membership, and we have a directory. I'll search it and I'll go, here are some names, and it's really up to them to decide where they take it. I always offer, I say, I'm happy to make an introduction. Of course, they'll go, I don't share board resumes, so they'll go look at their LinkedIn as a starting point. So what I would say, and I think you mentioned it, is that, and I think you did as well, Robin, is make sure your LinkedIn is current, because people are going to go there whether you think they're going there or not. And so if it's not inviting, you won't even get a call. So you won't even know if you're being hit on, so to speak, right? So make sure your LinkedIn is very reflective of your skills, your expertise, and what you are looking for.
I want to just go back a little bit to that, to using a service like Women Get on Board. And there's other services like that, like the Institute of Corporate Directors, Deborah. So that sounds like it might be a more important route to go, rather than maybe going through a recruiter, but to really get involved in a network like Women on Board or the Institute of Corporate Directors as a service.
I think it's like anything. It's what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it, right? So as an example, every 2 weeks we post out board opportunities. And, to date, since January alone, we've posted, say, 240 board opportunities, of which about 40% of them are paid. And some of them are public sector, and the public sector, they have a posting you can go, whether it's federal, provincial, municipal, they post all of their opportunities. You just need to know where to look. And it's really up to individuals to go and look to see, to kind of say, am I interested? Do I have the skills? And we just post them out. So we're a channel on that. And it's up to individuals to decide if they should pursue it or not. And our members are very active in pursuing that. At the same time, the Institute, I'm a member of Institute of Corporate Directors, and they post board opportunities as well to the members. You have to log in and do it. It's a much bigger pool. We're 800 plus members. There's 16,000 members, right? So and it's not just focused on women, it's, broader community. So there are different organizations out there that post opportunities to their members specifically. In Calgary, there's an organization, you might know this, Allison, I can't remember if it's Getting Board Ready or Board Ready Women, and they post out board opportunities. They're very Calgary or Alberta focused. So there's in the US, there's Boardless. So there's a multitude of different organizations. I think you just have to be mindful if they say, okay, we're going to post this board opportunity, but the only way we're going to share it with you is that you have to now pay a monthly fee to access them. There's some that are, I think, a little bit marketing, and I'm not sure how viable the opportunities are, but there are different ways to, and I think you just go on LinkedIn and search too. We do a lot of search on LinkedIn, and some of you have to be mindful that they're actually viable, but there's a lot of opportunities out there.
You've both mentioned LinkedIn a little bit. Robin, how important do you think it is to have that LinkedIn profile be up to date? Is that to seem like
It's massive.
Okay.
It's massive. And there are so many things that people can do that I don't even realize I don't think they realize they can do. So for example, everybody kind of knows that they can put their photo there, but not everybody realizes that you can adjust the background photo. Most people's LinkedIn profiles that I go to just have this generic like gray blob that LinkedIn offers. You can customize that to say something about you. And I think it's a really important, and we'll talk about brand later, I'm sure. It's a really important way at a glance when somebody goes to your site. Like if you go to mine, and please all connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd love that. You can see that I'm a speaker. And you can see Glass Sky because there's a logo. And so, you can use that to say something about you, your areas of expertise and your areas of interest. The other thing that I think you should be doing, yes, as Deborah said, get really, really clear on how you express your interests and your talents. Like the subject line, what's your title? It doesn't have to be your generic job title. It can be how you walk in the world, right? What kind of person you are, right? Are you a leader? Are you a visionary? Those types of creative kind of descriptions always help people understand authentically who you are. The other thing that you've got to be active. You've got to be out there commenting. So if you're interested in a particular sector, if you're interested in service on a particular company's board, get out there and follow them and like their posts and comment on their posts. They will notice. Absolutely, there will be people. Increasingly, CEOs are very engaged online, right? They're managing their own social media. We do work for a massive organization, and it always blows my mind every time I put something on LinkedIn. The CEO is like clicking me that day. They're very engaged, so they will notice. Absolutely. So get out there and get commenting, get liking, get active, get people to see you that way. The other way that you can get people to see you is by creating your own posts, your own original posts that help people understand that you have thought leadership too, and that there are ways that you can engage on critical topics. So I think LinkedIn, and I could go on and on about LinkedIn, it's a secret weapon if you're using it properly.
So Robin, I'm as passionate about LinkedIn as you are too. And I find a lot of people kind of go, oh, they're kind of have dipped their toe in, but not all the way. So they might, occasionally like something, but they're not reposting, they're not celebrating, and it's not on a regular basis. And so you've got to be active to be noticed, but it has to be authentic. So the other thing that you can do is you can identify the topics or the areas that you want to follow. So hashtag sustainability, hashtag corporate governance. Like I'm very, very mindful on, I am not going to comment on what you had for breakfast, Robin, because that's your choice if you want to share it. And I think LinkedIn is a very professional environment, and it's a way to share and celebrate and be part of community, but you want to be very deliberate and making sure that it is current. Like, so recently, and it wasn't in my bio, I recently received an award for the Sustainability Award for Global 50 Women Leaders. And I realized my bio that you read didn't have it in there, but it's on my LinkedIn. It's on my title. So I was more interested in getting it there. And I kind of went, whoops, I forgot to do that. So, but that's okay. that's my bad, not, but I made sure it was actively reflected in my LinkedIn. And so I think whether it's awards, whether it's thought leadership, whether it's speaking engagements, you just really have to be active. And it's not like you have to spend hours. I think you just have to find a time of day and do it on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yes to all that. Yes.
How would you manage your resume that's geared for a board with your LinkedIn profile? Are those going to be different in terms of your branding, or will they be very similar in the kind of thing that you're trying to express?
To me, at this level, the themes have to be the same. There's got to be consistency. So when people say, who's Robin? And if 5 people are asked, I want them all to be able to respond somewhat in the same way. I want them to know what I do. I want them to know the impact and the accomplishments. And guess what? I want them to know my network. She knows so-and-so and she knows so-and-so, right? I mean, that is how it works. So I think there's got to be a high level of consistency there. Definitely LinkedIn is at a higher level. I mean, but with resumes, even resumes, we're increasingly doing visual resumes for clients. So I think, Allison, in the intro, you talked about what my company does. So a piece of the work is communications. And so I'm finding that for top CEOs and even CEOs who want to serve on big boards are coming to us, and we're redoing in a visual way to get to the key elements. So at a glance, they know impact. They understand how can this person immediately add value. Don't make them hunt for it.
So when we're looking at branding, and we were going to talk about that, but I think we should just maybe talk a little bit about that now, since we're on this topic, is developing that brand something that you can start to develop through LinkedIn or through your resume or through your connections? How do you think it's most effective for someone to build that brand?
Okay,
I'll lean in, Robin.
Yeah, I've got lots to say, but you go and then I'll go.
I don't have a strategic marketing communications firm, but I speak to women all the time about, their board resumes and how they show up and their presence. And so I think what you really want to do is, first of all, you need to be very clear on what your value proposition is. Okay. So, and there is a really good diagram, a good backdrop reference is that, and it's from Directors Prep. They have a diagram about your value proposition. In the center is your value. So that's you. And around it, you have your knowledge, you have your influence, and you have your leadership. So, and Robin, I think that really speaks to your impact and your accomplishments. So you want to know in that circle, your value and what makes you unique. And you have certain knowledge. So I'm going to have financial, governance expertise, entrepreneurial, leadership, sustainability. And then I have leadership. And what I've been trying to demonstrate in my leadership, I literally have been serving as lead independent director. So that shows leadership from a board. Any of the committees I'm chairing the respective committees. And I just recently was appointed to chair of a special committee. Okay. So I'm not necessarily I'm only going to play if I get to lead. That's certainly not the case, but I've earned a space at the table. And I'm going to make sure that I'm not overlooked, but I deserve to be there and I've gained the respect. So I think for me, I want to demonstrate that leadership of where I am in my governance contributions. And then my influence, what is my influence? And I have a phenomenal network. And I know that that has a big influence. But I will also say, I will not introduce someone in through my network if I don't know them well enough, because it's my reputation, right? And a lot of people like, hey, I noticed you are connected to so-and-so. Well, if I don't really know that person, or I haven't seen that person in 10 years or connected, I'm not going to go out of my way to make that natural connection. And I find that when you start getting into that networking side, it's reciprocity. It has to be a two-way relationship. You can't always take. You have to give and take. And those are the best relationships that really evolve over time when you're networking.
I want to come back to that in terms of that connection, but I did want to hear, Robin, on your comments a little bit more on branding.
I think branding is an inside job, and it needs to start with you really spending some time thinking about, for example, how you'd like to be introduced. What are the highlights that you would like to make sure come out of someone's mouth when they say, I know Abby, or let me tell you about Kathy or Kelsey? And I actually take pen to paper or on my computer and I write the ideal introduction. And then I start to take those keywords and I populate my profile. And then I start to make sure that people in my network hear those same words. When they say, hey, what do you do? It's a thread that I pull through everything, but it always starts with me sitting down. And, sometimes you have to reinvent yourself because you bolt on new skills, you change jobs, you have a different experience. Some other ones are no longer relevant to the particular job you're going for. And so, it always starts though with you owning that description and then pulling a thread through everything because there's got to be that consistency. And Deborah, I'm seeing that I love that model that you described because I think it's the ingredients, right, that you would put into this description, and people want copies of the model, I think. It sounds fabulous.
It's in the ebook they're going to get.
Perfect.
All right, let's go back then to talking a little bit about network and curating your network. There's been discussion, and Deborah, you've mentioned it several times in your book, How to Get Yourself on a Board, about the importance of having a sponsor. So I'm quite curious what the difference is between a sponsor and a mentor, and then also how we develop a relationship with that potential sponsor and what it looks like, and making sure someone is open to being a sponsor.
Well, I think there's the fundamental difference at a really high level of a mentor versus a sponsor is really a mentor is a coach, an advisor, somebody who inspires you and tries to bring the best out in you. Okay. And they're going to invest their time to help develop. And, some of them might just be, hey, a coffee meeting. Some might be an ongoing, we have a formal mentorship program that we have at Women Get on Board. And it's a year-long program. And it's matching aspiring women corporate directors with accomplished women corporate directors. So you really build that relationship over time. But somebody has a vested interest in helping you make an impact. Whereas a sponsor is someone who's going to talk about you when you're not there. So they're going to talk. So in my particular case, someone might say, I'm looking for a board member with XYZ. And I may say, oh my God, I just got off a call with Robin. She is looking. You know what? I think you should talk to her. She doesn't even know that I'm talking about her right now, right? And so a sponsor, and you can't automatically assume a mentor will be your sponsor, because sponsors are might be previous colleagues, previous board members, previous clients that have seen you in action, and they'll speak about you when you're not there. And hopefully it's good. They may speak about you and you may not get that opportunity. So to me, those are the fundamental, but in either case, it's that two-way relationship. And I think throughout your career, you can be a mentor and you can be a mentee, and you can be a sponsor, or you can sponsor others, right? So I think you want to be mindful throughout your career. I think you can have different roles that you play, and you can be sponsored or you can sponsor others. And I always know the impact that I had from mentors and sponsors. So I always take it upon myself, if I have the opportunity to mentor others, I will. And if I can sponsor others, because I've had some phenomenal sponsors over the years I didn't ask for. And next thing you know, I was being introduced to a board opportunity. And so that to me is, but just be mindful. Not everyone's you won't even know sometimes. It's like a fairy godmother. You may not even know you have a sponsor. They will be very aware of your work and what you bring to the table. And so those are my high level. But I think in your network, you don't want to have all mentors and all sponsors. You want to have a combination of people that are going to champion you in different ways.
So really, it's not a formal relationship like a mentor relationship. It's more just a networking and relationship that you've developed over time, where someone is championing you for different opportunities. Okay.
You may find in large corporate organizations that they actually have sponsors, like they're going to sponsor you to get that executive level position. So there may be more of a formal that way. I haven't really, it's been 20 plus years that I've been in a formal corporate environment. So mine have been more informal through colleagues of mine that I've been on boards with. That's been more my sponsors over the last 20 years. Robin, I don't know where your sponsors come in.
Certainly in the corporate environment, we see more and more executive members sponsoring, in particular women, right? To give them more visibility at meetings, to make sure that they get projects, to make sure that they're given an opportunity to showcase their impact and their talent. So you do see some of those formal programs rising up, but I think what you're talking about is that relationship that develops over time because someone has seen you at work and they know you're credible and they know you're serious and they know you can have impact. And I always say they're wearing your jersey when you're not in the room. And now I'm going to talk about the fairy godmother because I love that, Deborah. That's exactly how it goes. Now, that's not to say you can't cultivate a sponsor and, you know, someone who you have a very strong proven track record with, to be able to have a conversation with them about, you know, having their support when you're going up for your next promotion. That's absolutely fair game for sure. But more often than not, you're right. You don't really know, but you have had to put the work into the network and to your branding and to your track record in order to get the sponsor. It just doesn't happen without it.
How about becoming a sponsor yourself? Robin, I know you've had some experience in this. How is that relationship and how does that look and work?
That is about being a champion and knowing when you have a moment to speak up and to intervene. So whether it's to speak up and champion somebody for a role because you know that you have information about their talents and their capabilities that need to be considered by a broader group. So knowing that, hey, I can contribute to this and I am going to recommend this individual. Or intervention. I mean, in my role as chair and in my role on past boards, I have encountered situations, and it is with women, where women self-select out prematurely. You know, we are juggling all kinds of activities, and maybe people have joined boards and they weren't particularly clear on why they were on that board. And I have had people come to me and say, you know what, Robin, I just think it's time for me to step back. And I never say, okay. I never accept that. I say, okay, hold on. Why? So let's talk about it. And if it's time, I'll respect that and other obligations. But if it's that the fit doesn't seem there, and this has happened to me, I try to understand, all right, so what committees are you on? What is it that you're looking for? Where's the best match with your talent? I cheerlead lots, especially if it's somebody I do not want to lose because I believe that they make a strong contribution. I'm very encouraging. And I'll say to somebody, I need you to think about this for the next 2 weeks. I just do not want you to resign. And then I work with them. If they come back and I tell them, we'll work on a pathway. We'll work on a pathway to put you on a different committee, or if you aspire to leadership, we will work on a pathway. And usually that just, oh, wow. You know, you all of a sudden hear from that individual that they do aspire to leadership and they're not quite sure how to get there because it feels like it's this inner circle. And so you can demystify that. And I think you can really do a lot to help women on their journey up to the top of some boards. But you've got to know when you're being called upon, when the universe is calling upon you to engage as a champion and a sponsor. And so Deborah's right. You can be sponsored, but you pay it forward and you become the sponsor.
Yeah, you've both mentioned that before about paying it forward. And it seems like that's a pretty critical piece to building out trust and respect within the network. So
yeah, you have to earn it. You can't, like, again, it's about earning it and developing it and building those relationships and being aware when you step into a role to champion others and being the cheerleader, and then having others, you know, pushing you. I always say, you know, you should always go outside your comfort zone. So you might go in in a particular leadership role on a board, but maybe sometimes taking on a different committee, taking on and leaning in different ways, because that's really your power. And you know what? It's scary sometimes, but it's very fulfilling, because if you're going to keep developing and it's a journey to be on boards, then you want to continually push yourself to be your best always.
we have time for a couple of more comments before we open it up to Q&A. What is the one key piece that you would leave with our participants today? Deborah, do you have a key piece of advice?
Yeah, I mean, we're really talking about networking your way and finding board opportunities. I would say be very strategic, not, hey, I'd like to be on a board someday and cook your hair and, you know, very nonchalant. Be very focused, like, I'm interested in being on a public company board in in a consumer-based, large cap, and I want it to be global. And here's what I can bring to the table. So I think when you are thinking about that you want to be on a board, be very strategic on what you bring, what type of company or organization that you want to align yourself with, and and be ready. So if you put it out there, you got to be ready for it, right? You got to be prepared. So strategy all the way.
Strategy all the way. Okay. Robin, how about you? What is your key piece of advice for our participants today?
My piece builds on what do you bring to the table, which is your brand. And that's probably no surprise, but it's getting really clear on how you express your brand, your value proposition, your expertise, your capabilities, your impact. You got to get that tight and you got to get that impressive, right? And it's tough sometimes for us to be objective in doing that for ourselves. So use family members, use colleagues, use friends as a sounding board. I live and breathe in communications. I can't even tell you how many hundreds of words I write every single day. I can't do my own. I can't do my own. I need somebody to look at it and say, Robin, that's not important.
Robin,
right?
let's take that offline. Let's have our own virtual sponsorship for each other.
Exactly. So, use people as sounding boards, but get it sharp.
Okay. Thank you both. I'd like to open it up to questions now. And so I invite everybody to go ahead and type some questions in and we'll answer them. I've got a few more of my own if we need. While everyone is thinking, I'm curious to know what the biggest mistake is that you see people doing when they are approaching someone about a board position. Deborah, you've got lots of experience in that. What have you seen as some tragic errors?
Well, if there's a board opportunity, there's either you call it a board spec, a board position profile, read it. And I've had the case where it was specifically looking, it was a mining company, and they were specifically looking for somebody that had their accounting designation, their CPA. And we posted this out to our members and it was really clear what they were looking for. And that was like the first requirement. And we were getting board resumes coming in that did not, like, to me, I always say that's, the sweet spot. If you were throwing arrows, that would be the center bullseye. They were so off the bullseye. And then you kind of had to come back to them and go, well, look, you didn't fit because the first requirement was this. So I would say and again, you're diluting your brand by not being realistic and really trying to align. Sometimes you have to do a stretch if it's not as clear as that. But I use that as an example because I find sometimes women won't because they feel like, oh, I'm not qualified and there's this imposter syndrome. But on the other hand, I find sometimes people just either aren't reading it clearly or they feel, what the heck? It's a board opportunity. I'm getting paid. I'm just going to throw it in there. And that's not being strategic.
Okay, thank you. Robin, I have a question for you from our audience is, how do you navigate a change of industries? If you're interested in a board in one particular industry, but you have expertise in another, and I think along that line, it's sort of a brand shift.
Yes. Okay. And I have navigated changes in industries. And I think ultimately you need to come back to your talents and the space that you are working in. So whether I'm working in telecommunications or whether I'm working in wholesale distribution or whether I'm working in academia, what is it that my knowledge brings? And then how do you describe that? How do you describe how you bring that expertise to bear? So I think you've got to actually leverage the fact that you're exposed to different sectors and talk about the fact that you have a broad suite of knowledge and experiences. And I think that you leverage it into something very positive.
Thank you. What a question from the audience again is about education. And in this case, sort of the importance of getting the ICD certification or potentially another certification. Deborah, how important have you found that to be?
Well, full disclosure, I have my ICD.D, which I got paid by one of the boards I was on. I was already on boards for about 5 or 6 years before I took it. And I also just recently got my Competent Boards GCB.D, which is a global certification on ESG. So I'm not expecting that I have these designations that it's going to like, it's going to be a differentiator for me. But what it did was giving me the confidence to say, yes, I have a better understanding of governance frameworks and structures, and now more on sustainability and ESG. So I did it for my own learning. And yes, it's great to have it, but I wouldn't say that like, not all board, and if you read a lot of the board opportunities, you're reading the board position spec or the board profile, they'll say board experience. So they'll more likely say board, nice to have governance certification, but there's so many certification programs out there that you have to just be mindful. They're very costly, take time. And so you kind of have to say, why are you taking it? Why is it important? It may be the final straw if you're down to candidates and that each equally have the same amount of board experience. Maybe that one person that has a governance certification may trump the other ones, but at the same time, someone could have the board certification, but with no board experience. So, I think it's a balance, and I think you just have to be really intentional in why you're taking it and what you want to get from it.
Thank you. To that end, we sometimes hear that when people are looking for board experience, they're not actually looking, they want corporate board experience. And if you only have nonprofit experience, has that been a help or a hindrance? Robin, what have you seen? You've gone through that path.
I saw that question come up and I was going to answer it even if you didn't ask me.
Way to go, Robin.
So I think it's really important that you understand how to speak to the different scenarios that you have encountered serving on a nonprofit board. So for example, when you can articulate how you as a board from a governance perspective were able to engage in leadership, right, and guiding management, how were you able to maybe work through a financial situation? How did you assess a risky situation and protect the reputation, the financial health and sustainability of the organization? These are all things that are transferable and scenarios that in the corporate world we can relate to. I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion and advancing those strategies in a nonprofit world and how relevant that is to a profit world. I think about ESG that you just talked about, Deborah. So when we can articulate scenarios that you've grappled with as a member of a board in a nonprofit world, I absolutely believe that they are relevant. And anybody who dismisses nonprofit experience probably hasn't worked on a very engaged or effective board in the nonprofit space.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Compensation comes up periodically, and some boards have, compensation. Often it's public companies, big corporations. A lot do not. Is that something that everyone should expect? What kind of compensation is out there? Typically nonprofits, do they compensate or not? How does someone that's considering a board approach compensation? Deborah?
Perfect. We're just finalized the ink on our e-guide series, and the next one that'll get posted next week is on board compensation. So I'd like to say stay tuned. But what I will say to you is I would fundamentally say you're not joining a board to get rich. Okay, so let's take that off the table. Even if, not unless you are the chair of RBC or one of the large banks, you might be taking down $500,000 plus. Okay, so for most, however, you can get informed. If it is a public company, all the disclosures on board compensation, director compensation are in the proxy circulars, right? Which is the annual filing. So you can go and look. Typically on any public company boards, it's under the Nominating Corporate Governance Committee. You would maybe do a biannual, maybe every 2 years, you would assess where your board compensation is relative to others in your industry, market comparables. But I would say for private companies, it's a little bit more challenging. And I think you want to look at it, if it is for profit, you want to make sure that you're getting paid for value, right? Because you have an area of expertise and you think about, you have to protect yourself. So volunteer boards are volunteer boards. And you also have to be mindful for a volunteer board there may be an expectation, not only you're going to give your time, but you're going to give your money too. I was on the board of the National Ballet School board. We want you to contribute X on an annual basis. And we also want you to go out to your network and do a multiplier effect of that, right? So I always say, there's an expectation you're going to give. There's an expectation that you're going to get. And if you don't give and you don't get, you're getting off. Okay. So I think it's all over the map, but I think you can get informed. If it's a public company, those disclosures are all there. Spencer Stuart, some of the other executive search firms do these annual board index, and you can get some trends. And the trend is really away from meeting fees to more retainers and depending on the number of committees, depending on which committees you chair. So I think it is very important for you to get informed on what your value is and what you should be getting paid. But at the same time, if you're coming off of being an executive and making, a certain salary range, you'd have to have 2 or 3 very significant public company boards too, if you're trying to offset it. And sometimes you get on boards and, company might go through M&A, restructure, and, you thought you were going to be on that board for several years. And I was on a public company board. It was emerging industry cannabis. And within 14 months from going public, we had a very significant exit. And I didn't see that coming. I mean, it was good, but my tenure was only 14 months. And I leaned in and expected much longer. So I think it really varies. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you. What about being selected for a board just from a gender perspective or some other targeted perspective rather than talent or expertise? There's a question on whether or not, should that be accepted? Should that be dismissed? Should it even be a consideration when you're thinking about the board? Why you've been asked? Robin?
Yeah, I don't think gender exists in isolation like that. I think boards are very savvy and search firms are very savvy, and they absolutely look at talent. They absolutely look at talent. They look at talent first. They look at diversity as an important priority as well, of course. But I don't think that in these times, gender exists as an isolated decision. No.
Agreed. And at the end of the day, there's the power of 3. 1 woman on a board is token, 2 women is presence, and 3 is voice. So if you are that token, whether you're a visible minority, gender, whatever it is, there is tokenism there, and you certainly don't want to be the token. You certainly want to be there because you contribute and add value.
Okay, thank you.
Now, can I say, however, if boards are looking to diversify and they do want more of a gender mix, you shouldn't you shouldn't take that as a negative thing. Right? Because they're also looking at your skills. And I do hear that sometimes from women saying, oh gosh, they just want me there because I'm a woman. No, actually they don't. They want you there because you're bringing other things, but you need to hear the opportunity in that. If you're also being looked at because you're a woman, then yes, walk through the door and own it. Oh, I think the lights have gone off here. Motion sensor.
Go.
Maybe that's our time, Alex.
Well, on that note, then, I'd like to thank you both for sharing your insights on this panel today. It's been terrific. We've covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time, and I think it was very successful. We all learned a lot. Deborah, can I get you to do some closing remarks before we do the breakout rooms?
Okay, thank you, Allison, for your very engaging conversation. And Robin, it's been wonderful. I can't wait to have a virtual chat with you. But before we go into sort of closing, I just noted that there were some questions that we didn't get to, which is great to see the engagement. So Robin, I'm going to put you out there and I'm going to put myself out there. Feel free to link in with either one of us. We're out there. And if there was a question that didn't get answered, feel free to connect to us because we'd be very happy to answer them. So before we get to the networking breakout group, I just want to say thank you to BMO for being our national strategic partner and hosting this event with Women Get On Board. 2, I want to thank Robin and Allison. It's been a delight to work with you. And 3, thanks to myself, because I, as of Monday, was not being on this panel. And then unfortunately, Judith, who was one of the panelists, had family matters that she could not attend today. So thank you for letting me jump in. Thank you all for everyone that showed up and asked questions. It was phenomenal. And just to let you know, post the event, there'll be a recording in a couple days. You'll get a copy, you'll get a recording. Following the event, you will get a email thanking everyone, and there'll be a feedback survey. So we really want to hear from you on the feedback. And then we've got some links to some of our upcoming events. So Robin, thank you. I know you need to get home safely.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Allison, thank you for your time. And BMO, it's always a pleasure to have you as our national strategic partner. So thank you. So for those that are staying on, we have a networking breakout groups that we're going to facilitate. What we're going to do is we're going to break you in groups of between 6 to 8 people. And I'm going to let Keisha and my team do their magic. So when you go into the breakout group, it's going to be a really rapid fire introduction. You're going to say, hey, I'm Deborah Rosati. I'm based in Niagara Falls. I'm a corporate director and I'm founder and CEO of Women Get On Board. You know, at least get that rapid fire. And then from there, start having conversations with the group is, how did you get on your first board? And if not, what are people looking for? Because here's an opportunity. You're going to have, 6 to 8 women that you haven't met. And it's an opportunity to network with each other. And we're only going to do one breakout group. You're going to get magically disappear into your breakout group and you won't return into the main room. So once the 25 minutes is up, you'll get notified. And we want to make sure you stay connected with new contacts, those that you've just gone into a breakout group. Go connect with them on LinkedIn. And also we have through our community hub, everyone that attended this event is in that community hub. So happy networking. Thank you all for your time. Enjoy the rest of the session, and we'll see you at our next event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will open up the breakout rooms now. Enjoy.